Hi, this is Buzz Cason, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
We can never go back to the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve have sinned. We can't go back again.
Okay, your first group was the Casuals, which I believe are considered Nashville's first rock and roll band. Tell us about them, and how ambitious were you in those very early days?
Well, John, I was in an art class in Lytton High School here in east part of Nashville, Inglewood section, and I was fully planned to be a commercial artist. That's what I wanted to do. Or I was kind of interested in drama a little. I wanted to direct. I was interested in film and things like that. But my buddy Jim Seymour said, "Hey, why don't you come out and do a production number with us at this recording studio?" Now this is like 1956, So I said, "Hey, I don't even know what that is." He said, "Well, we're going to lip sync a record by Bing Crosby, White Christmas." it was Christmas time of the year. And I said, "Oh, man, I don't know. That's not my thing. I'm more of an art guy." He said, "There'll be a lot of girls." I said, "I'll do it." So when I got out there and started doing that, also the DJ Noel Ball, who also was a record producer, he produced Arthur Alexander in the other early days and worked with Dot Records a little. He hired us to do sets, to kind of paint the sets and backdrops. So we got a little bit of extra money on the side doing that and used our art talents. And then I started lip syncing records, and I saw my first live band there with three guys, Richard Williams Trio, and they were doing some songs. Richard was playing, and Chester Powers playing accordion, and he played a bass. He played the left hand, made it sound kind of like a bass, and then Billy Smith was playing drums, and Johnny McCreary on guitar. So I wormed my way into that band. I kept asking their manager, hey, let me sing. He said, "Well, they've got a singer. Richard's a singer." I said, "Yeah, but you could use another singer, And so I wound up getting into the band, and I named it the Casuals. I said, "Hey, we need a name, And so we had two single releases for Dot Records, which were recorded at the WSX radio studio in Nashville, which is still one of the top country stations in this area. But back in those days, they had studios in those old radio stations because they had live bands would play in Well, it was just about over in the 50s, but they'd have church groups come in on Sunday, and then they'd have country music and big bands and things play. So they had little studios in a lot of the radio stations. So that's where we cut our first record, and we became very popular around town playing fraternity parties, and we played at a theater out in Donaldson, Tennessee, that Noel Ball was the DJ, and he gave us a lot of publicity on TV. Of course, playing on television back then was a big deal, and we became real popular because of that, and then our record was a regional hit, in that area. So we had a big time doing it and getting started like that.
Do you still remember that first thrill of the first time hearing something of yours on the radio?
Yes, definitely. And it was a song called "My Love Song for You." Richard's first song I ever wrote. Richard and I wrote it, Richard Williams and I. And it's still that same feeling comes back when you hear something on the air. It's always been one of the great thrills of being in music is hearing your stuff, because it just started out in your in your den or down at the studio or something, and it turned out to be a record, and it's on the air, And so that's always a thrill. We hear our stuff on the satellite, our newer stuff now on the Sirius XM satellite over here in the States, and it's always a kick. I'll be way out in Texas or New Mexico and hear something, it really knocks you out.
Tell us how you first met up with Bobby Russell, and did the two of you click together immediately as a working team?
Well, I met Bobby at the old Globe Studios. The studio was above what is now Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, which is a watering hole here in Nashville, a beer joint that was right behind the Opry, and all the guys would go over there and have beers in between sets, and things like that, playing the Opry. And it was called Mom's in those days. When I was on the road with the Casuals, this would have been about 58, something like that. When I'd come to town, I was interested in trying to get into writing and getting some songs down, and I was doing something up at that studio, and Bobby happened to be up there. And the first time I met him was in that studio, and he was from kind of a nicer section of town than I, and he was from the Hillsborough section. And he said he was kind of an arrogant kind of a kid, you know. He said, "Hey, do you write?" And I said, "Yeah, I write." And of course, I was qualified by having written that one half of that one song, you know. And he said, "Well, let's write sometime." So we went out. Sperry rode out to his home, and we wrote Tennessee, which we put down as a little group called the Todds. It was on Todd Records, which is owned by Paul Coyne, who started the Decca label here in Nashville. And he had broken away from Decca and had started his own label. His son was named Todd, so we named the group Todd. Well, almost immediately, Gary Walker, who published the song for us through Lowry Music, got it recorded by Jan and Dean. And so we thought, man, this is easy. We're on our way. Our first song we wrote, you know, gets in the charts. It got in the Billboard charts. And then later we wrote Popsicle for Jan and Dean, which became a pretty legitimate hit. It was a top 20 song. And then, of course, Bobby and I went on to form our partnership after later on I moved to California. When I came back in '68, we had Russell Cason Music, and that's when he wrote the great songs, Honey and Little Green Apples. And the rest was history after that.
Sure was. You've worked with some wonderful collaborators over the years in songwriting. Does your role in the songwriting collaboration differ depending on who you're writing with? Or is it pretty much the same procedure all the way?
Yes, it pretty much does. Like, for instance, with Bobby, we wrote, we were kind of 50-50, and he's a pretty good guitar player, but not as accomplished as, say, Mac Gaten, who I wrote Everlasting Love with. Mac pretty much carries the music end of it, the chords and everything. And then I add different counter lines and phrases and bass parts and things like that. And then when I wrote with Tom Douglas, he's a great piano player. Just using a few examples, and when you're writing with a keyboard, things turn out a little different, it seems. But I'm not real well schooled. I'm not a good guitar player or a piano player. I just kind of pound away at it. And here in Nashville, you have so many good players, and these songwriters play well, you know. And so it's a little intimidating to bring your guitar in and then trying to play in front of one of these guys that can really play. I had Jerry Reed over here at the house in his kitchen where I'm standing now out in Williamson County, and Jerry Reed, before he passed, he was over here, and I was struggling with a guitar lick. He said, "Give me that thing, hand me that thing," you know. He took it out of my hand and just started playing it, you know. Of course, trying to play guitar in front of a great guitar player like him is foolish, you know. Yeah.
You mentioned Matt Gaten. How did you first meet up with Matt?
How did I meet up with Mac?
Yeah.
Yes, I first met Mac down at Ernie's Record Mart, which in the late 50s, well, actually all through the 50s, the mom and pop record stores such as Ernie's, Randy Record Shop, and Randy, of course, later on became head of Dot Records, was up in Gallatin, Tennessee, and then there was Buckley's Record Shop downtown Nashville, and several of them were where you would get your rhythm and blues records. Of course, us kids of that era, we were into, you know, Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, Joe Turner, B.B. King, the early group, Moonglows, Clovers, and all that. So I was down picking up some records, and it might have been while I was still doing TV, because Noel Ball would give me a slip, a paper, and he would say, "Give Buzz 5 records," you know, and I'd go pick out 5 records that I wanted to lip sync. And I don't know if that was still during that time or not. But Mac was working. He was working at the record store. And there's where we first met. And then we just kind of became buddies. He was with another band, the Gators. And of course, we were casuals. And we would just cross paths every now and then. And then one day we got together and started working with Robert Knight and producing him. That was well, actually, our first project together was with Clifford Curry on a song called "She Shot a Hole in My Soul," which was a regional R&B hit and hit the national charts somewhat too. We did several records on Clifford together, and then a duet called Van and Titus. And then we did the songs that were hits in Australia, Hayride, the Flying Circus.
That's right. Yeah.
goes way back, and Lala, I think Lala, and then we did, there's some others that were hits there that we wrote that were kind of, you know what you call bubblegum records.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sugar Coated Candy Love, I think, was a hit over there.
That's right. And Groupie for the New Dream.
Yeah, Groupie, right. And so Mac and I, we had a kind of a diversified career as writers. We're actually back writing together now. We're doing a new project on Robert Knight. It's basically for, well, it'll be kind of for the UK, but it'll be a worldwide release. And then we're writing for a girls group, which his daughter is a part of. So it's real great to be back with him. He had moved off to the mountains, and they, because of allergy problems and things of Diane, his wife, they had to move back here. So, but they're glad to be back because their family is here and everything. So that's a good thing.
Amongst your many achievements in music, something that not too many people may know about you, that you were once a voice for Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Well, that was back in '64. I met Ross Bagdasarian, and I was working as an assistant and kind of a junior producer with Snuff Garrett there in Hollywood. And Ross had done, of course, the Chipmunk song. And when the Beatles came out, everybody was jumping on the bandwagon. We're doing covers, and so they decided to do Chipmunks Meet the Beatles. And we we did all the early hits, From Me to You, I Want to Hold Your Hand, She Loves You, and all that stuff. We did them all in about 12 hours one night. And of course, in those days, you didn't have the electronic ways to speed things up or digital ways. You just cut the records you cut the songs at half speed, and instead you would have to sing them half speed, the slow tracks, and down an octave, and then when they'd come back, they'd be up, sounding like Chipmunks.
Yeah.
So we did that, and Ross was a wonderful guy to work with, the original David Seville. I loved it because he would come in every day in a different sports car. He really enjoyed his money, and he was a fantastic guy. We lost him at too young of an age, and his son, Ross Bagdasarian Jr., inherited the project, the name, and everything. And then Bergen White and I were on the Urban Chipmunk record too. Also on a singer named Dennis Wilson, who's a very accomplished singer here in town. But on the original, on the Chipmunks in L.A. were me and Ron Hicklin, who became one of the most successful vocal contractors and singers out there, and Bob and Al Kelp. Al Kelp later became an arranger for Snuff Garrett on a lot of his records. And the three of us did background vocals, so we did those early Chipmunk records. And then we also did the Bergen, and Dennis and I did the television show, which comes out every Christmas.
Now, the song Adam and Eve was a huge hit for you down here in Australia, probably more so than anywhere else in the world. Did you ever really find out why Australia, do you have a theory why Australia took to the song more so than anyone else?
No, that was just really strange because it did not hit. It didn't do much here at all, or anywhere else for that matter. You may know, being in radio, you may know what, I cannot conjure up the original label that was on over there. I can't what record company it was, but they must have done a good job, or someone somewhere liked it, And in those days, you would go to meet them and con and make record deals. I don't know whether I made that deal over there, because we used to do, as independent publishers and producers, we would make a lot of deals. It was wonderful fun, and great publisher Al Gallico got me into going over there, and he said, "Buzzy, you can go and you can make your expense money back the first day on advances." And sure enough, I would, and we some way or another we hooked up with getting that record out. I believe it was on Elf Records originally over here, and they may have leased it out. I don't know how the business went on it, how it wound up on the label over there, but it was just a fluky thing, and I guess some radio people, some DJs or somebody liked it because it did pretty well for us. And I think it was like 1968.
That sounds about right, yeah. And it wasn't long after that you had other successes down here with your songs. You mentioned the two hits for the Flying Circus, Hayride and La La, and Groupie for the New Dream. How aware were you at the time of those hits were happening down here? Was the news getting back to you?
Oh yeah, we kept up with it, and we were really thrilled. You know, you didn't travel as much back then as you do now, and so I wish I'd come over and kind of capitalize on that song and maybe tried to have a little career down under, but we were all busy and all kind of other stuff. But I'd love to get over there now.
Of course, your most covered song is Everlasting Love, a song that's been a hit down here twice for two Australian acts, as well as numerous times around the world for other artists. Do you remember writing that song, and could you see the hit potential of it straight away?
Well, Mac and I had a session planned for Robert Knight, who's a young African-American artist from here in Franklin, Tennessee, not far from where I'm standing right now, maybe 20 miles. And Robert had been in a group, a stand-up, a vocal group called the Paramounts for Dot Records, and they hadn't had much success. They had a few releases. And Mac had known of Robert from way back. His mother had worked for his family way back, and he had known Robert for a while. And then Robert was also sang live with the Fairlanes band. And so he was a much respected singer in this area. And he said, let's try to do a record on him. So Fred Foster, the great producer from Monument Records, had formed a label with Bobby Russell and I, Rising Suns, and he gave us a budget to record Robert. And we were, the night before the session, we had 3 songs, and we needed a 4th song, and Mac had these 2 melody ideas, and I said, man, is there any way you could hook them together? Put them into one song. He said, yeah, but I don't have time to work on it. I got to go. The wife's got dinner waiting. So anyway, I said, well, I'll put something to it. And that's really, we kind of didn't have much time to work on it. That's really why the song doesn't have but one verse. You actually just the instrumental of the second verse. Da, 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 when it comes in. We get to the session, and Robert picks up on it pretty quick, and but it turns out to be the way we recall it. The last song on the session, we almost ran out of time getting it cut, but it wasn't but a couple of cuts, and that we knew we had something real magical with that song, And we had some outstanding young musicians of those days. Kenneth Buttrey on drums, the great Charlie McCoy was playing like little bell chimes, and Pig Robbins playing piano, Norbert Putnam on bass, some great horn players, and Carol Montgomery and I sang all the vocal parts. So, but we thought we had a song called The Weeper was going to be the A-side, but actually The Weeper never came out for some reason, but of course Everlasting was his biggest hit over here. Yeah.
It's been covered by so many people. Do you have a particular favorite version of it?
Well, I still like Robert's. I like because that's the original mood of the song. When Carl Carlson did, of course, a great version in '74. I had the pleasure of singing on that one also, and it was actually recorded in my studio in Berry Hill, Tennessee, close to Nashville, produced by Papa Don Schroeder. It was a million seller, and it kicked the tempo up into the dance thing, because in the '70s, of course, the dance beat was coming in, and it put it in a dance groove, and it's been so many different versions. Sandra's version in Europe was a great version. Michael Cretu produced, and of course Gloria Stefan's was a wonderful version, and even Jamie Cullum's kind of jazz version was a cool version, and you can't leave out U2. Their acoustic version was good, but I still go back to the Robert Knight. It's in its original form. The song got people would record it and maybe sing different lyrics, kind of do the wrong lyrics on it, and it would kind of it took away from the beauty of it, we thought, but we were very, very grateful, very thankful to get so many covers on it.
One of your more fascinating songs is Soldier of Love. It's a song that's had an amazing life. It's never really been a major hit for anybody, but it's been covered by so many artists, including the Beatles. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, that is you hit it on the nail on the head. It was a song that's been covered by some great artists and never really been a legitimate hit. Most recently, it was the title cut for the Derailers out of Austin, Texas. Derailers band, an album called Soldiers of Love, and they did a great version of it. I have also recently recorded what I think is one of the better versions that I've heard, because I had so many good musicians on it. But my son Taylor Cason, and we did a version of it here in Nashville that it will be coming out hopefully next year, and it's real unusual in that it starts with the verse. Soldier of Love always starts out with the chorus, lay down your arms, you know. But we wrote it, Tony Moon and I wrote that song for Arthur Alexander. It was one of those rare occasions where you actually write a song for an artist and they do record it, which a lot of times you write it and it winds up, you know, being cut by somebody you never heard of. But anyway, we had the opportunity, because of knowing Noel Ball, to get a cut by Arthur Alexander. So we wrote that song. We kid around. We've got kind of a Beverly Hills type section of Nashville called Belle Mead, and we kid around. We say this is probably the only R&B song ever written in Belle Mead. It's kind of a hotsy-totsy type neighborhood, uppity kind of. But Tony had rented a small little apartment over in there, and we wrote that song there and demoed it. And of course, that Arthur's was the first version. There was a kid named Grady, Grady Wilson or Grady, I can't remember his last name. He cut it, and then of course Marshall Crenshaw had a good version of it in the '80s, and I had the opportunity to get finally to sing that with Marshall here in Nashville at the Fab 4 festival that they have here for the Beatles, and they have like one of these Beatle memorabilia things, and the long players, which consists of Bill Lloyd and a bunch of great players. The long players go in and do an entire album or cover an artist and do a show here, and it's a benefit. And they do about one every 3 months, and it's really good. But anyway, we had, of course, Pearl Jam. I came out of my studio one day and they said, Pearl Jam's recording Soldier of Love. I said, no, you got to be joking. I don't think that could be. But what happened, there was a band in Seattle called the Headcoats, and they introduced Eddie Vedder and the guys to that song. And for some reason they did it on this Kosovo Relief benefit album. And it was also on the east side of The Last Kiss. And we hoped that we were going to get a single out of it. A lot of the fans really liked it. You know, they liked it even better than the A side. But I don't know, for whatever reason, they did not put it out as a single. But of course, the most fascinating story of that song is the Beatles, because Arthur Alexander was touring with them, and they recorded Anna, as you know, and they didn't have enough songs to play these long gigs like they were doing. And so they did a lot of covers. So they did that at the BBC on the radio show, and later on Capitol Records, of course, bought all those tapes and everything, and we were blessed to come out in about 1990 or whenever the Live at the BBC project came out, and it was really a shock to hear it. I heard it on a bootleg version first. Tony Moon called me. He said, "Listen to this," and I said, "That can't be who I think it is." He said, "It sure is." I dropped the phone. Especially it was the year I first heard it in '80. I believe it was the year that John Lennon was assassinated.
That's right. Yeah.
But anyway, it was the John sang lead on it, and I've never got to meet him. The only Beatle I ever met was Ringo, but hope to meet some of the other guys. Meet them all one day.
Now you've had the Creative Workshop Studios there for a long time now. What are some of the highlights for you of some of the recordings that have been made there?
Well, Larry Gatlin, the Gatlin brothers, recorded their first 5 #1 records there. Merle Haggard cut a #1 record. Josh Willie, Dolly's been there. A real important record in the pop charts was Bluer Than Blue by Michael Johnson. It was a big hit cut there. Some of the Doobie Brothers Stampede album was done there. Some of Jimmy Buffett's Havana Daydreaming. gosh, there's been a lot of bands. There's My Morning Jackets. One of the singers from there has recorded a solo album. Carl Brummel is coming out with a record that's cut there. So there's some current things happening. And the producer the drummer of Wilco is cutting there. So I mean, it's a lot of things still happening, but probably one of the bigger records too was Olivia Newton-John's "Don't Stop Believing" back in the '70s, and a song called "Sound." She did that album there with John Farrar, of course, from Down Under, and about that same time, "Just When I Needed You Most" was cutting there by Randy Van Warmer, which is just about my favorite record ever recorded there. And gosh, there's so many to mention. So many folks have come through those doors and have recorded there.
You would have seen a lot of changes in recording technology during the time you've had the studios. Do you think all changes and advancement in technology have necessarily been for the better?
I believe so. I believe, for the greatest part, I still record some analog. We're one of the only studios still has 2-inch tape available. And we do some of the tracks. I do my own Americana records there, and for instance, with the Derailers, Soldiers of Love album, we did that on analog, and we did my 2 records, Hats Off to Hank and Busload of Love. They were done analog. Of course, we go to digital to edit, and master. But some of the people, the young people are digging, they're digging the analog, and as well as, making vinyl discs, for promotion. But the changes are just amazing. I mean, I wish we'd had tools like that years ago when we were working with singers who weren't quite ready to record. We could have really helped them out a lot, But it's amazing what you can do now in a studio.
Now, not long ago, you put out your autobiography, and it seemed to have triggered a whole new surge of creative energy for you. You seem to be busier than ever these days. Did the book inspire you in that way?
Yes, it did. John, I was blessed to be friends with Aaron Brown for years, my buddy from the 3rd grade, and he was friends with Keith Murdoch, and I had been kind of pitching this book around to some agents trying to get something going, and everybody kept saying, hey man, why don't you write a book? And I always give Bill Lloyd of Foster and Lloyd credit, because we were doing a Buddy Holly tribute one night at Exit Inn here in Nashville, and he said, man, you got so many stories, you ought to write a book. I said, well, you're about the umpteenth person that suggested that. I'm going to go try to do it. So I got going on it, and Hal Leonard was kind enough to publish it for us, and we did a book tour. We had a fine promotion team behind us, and I did about 50 stops, 50 different cities, and when I would go into a town, I figured out real quick that I was going to have to play some songs. So I hadn't played much live. I mean, you do these writers' night things around town, songwriters get together and play, and I did have a rockabilly band back in '86, BC and the Darts, and we played some, but I hadn't played much with a band or even acoustic until this book came out, and then we started doing it. And we did a Belcourt Theater kickoff, had the Crickets come by, and Robert Knight sang, and Mac Gaden came out and played guitar for Robert, and we all jammed and everything. And so it was just natural that I would transcend into playing live some. And then my friend Michael Hearn from New Mexico, a great singer, guitarist, songwriter, he invited me to come to Texas to see that scene down there. And that's where I met the Derailers, and recorded with them, and started going to Texas doing some shows, because I met Chris Thomas of Paladero Records, and he said, send me some songs sometimes. I sent him some of my newer things, and he said, hey, these need to be out, So I said, well, they're really demos. He said, yeah, but I'd like to make a record. So we did a couple of records for him, and so I started playing, and we were doing some festivals this summer. We just got booked for the great band on Fort Payne, Alabama, doing the June Jam. It used to be one of the biggest festivals. Now it's a songwriters event. It's an indoor event now. We're doing that, and we're doing the River Bend in Chattanooga the next day, and then we're doing New Mexico festival in Taos, and then one in Red River, New Mexico, and just different shows around in this area. And then I have a band called the Love Notes, and we play. There's 4 of us all together, and we have a big time. We play some things. So it's a lot of fun.
Now, you're involved in something called the Southern Writers Group. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the Southern Writers Group originally was Nashville's only writer-owned group of publishing companies, and there were about 10 writers of us now. Now we're just down to just a few, because that was in the days before people were signing with the big companies, and the big publishers got wind of, Nashville, how hot things were happening, and came in and signed everybody. So independence really faded away. But Southern Writers Group is an administrative company, and we administrate copyrights for all of our companies, all the songs that we own. And occasionally we'll sign new writers. I have a new young man named Jesse Couch that I'm going to start working with. He's kind of a throwback, kind of the rock and roll, roots rock, rockabilly days. And there's always some newcomer coming up that we're working with, that will represent and administer their music to Southern Writers Group. And I have an able assistant, a lady that administrates it, Patricia Albrecht, and we have our foreign people too. So it's been a fun thing. It's really kind of a thing of the past to have a lot of writers signed when you're an independent, because it's really hard to buck up against the bigger outfits now.
And just before I let you go, Buzz, what's coming up for you? What are your upcoming plans for the rest of this year anyway?
Well, I have a new record coming out called Working Without a Net, and I think it's one of the best ones that we've done. My sons, Parker Cason and Taylor Cason, are involved with it. Some great musicians. Michael Hearn, who I mentioned, plays a great solo or two on it. Matt Gaden plays solos on it. Colin Wintery, who does my records and plays guitar and everything, that's coming out. And we have a few people we're producing. A young lady, it's called Tiffany Rose and Powergrass. It's kind of an electric bluegrass group. And then the young man I mentioned, Jesse Couch, and we're just doing what we can. My son's band's called Color Fields, and they're an amazing group. They're kind of a indie rock, but they have kind of a Euro pop feel about them, and kind of helping to get them launched, and just doing some interesting things and having a great time.
Fantastic, and still keeping busy. Buzz, thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you, and thank you for so many memorable songs over the years, and we're sure there's still plenty more to come.
Right. And I want to say hello to my friends from Bluestone, who I had the pleasure of coming there in 1980.
Yep.
Terry Dean and all the guys, because that was, and John Broughton, who brought me there. Man, what a great time we had, and I look forward to getting back in your part of the world.
Fantastic. We'll be here waiting for you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot, Buzz. All the best.